Hello, welcome to Nezzo's Bad Shop. I'm your host, Nezzo, and you are here because you clicked on something on YouTube. You clicked a link, and it said something about RDX and Reve-D and Constructor's Digest. This is the video where I'm going to tell you all about things inside the manual and describe little tips and tricks that I found or interesting things that I noticed along the way. And yes, this will help you build the car and hopefully save you some time along the way. Excuse me. My throat like never cooperates when I do these things, even though I try to make my voice good for this. So please bear with me. But yes, this is the Constructor's Digest, and so noisy. This is the car. Got the Yokomo S15 body on it and gave it a little cute little Sailor Moon livery, which is not sticking, but that's okay. So we're gonna remove the body. You can take it. Yeah, if you heard that hit my ring light. Anyways, this is the car, complete with Bad Shop OMG electronics. But yeah, it's a nice car to drive. It's fun. I can drive it just as hard as my comp car, and to me it's like a budget version of the MC1. And yes, there's things you can't do with this that you can do with the MC1. But regardless, for the price point in the budget Plastic Fantastic class, this is a great addition and has a lot of little neat innovative features across it. Two things which I'll show off just right now because I love showing it off. So you want to know what the status of your gears are in the transmission. Hold on, you turn that screw there, it'll trap door. Isn't that cute? So enclosed transmission, but you can see what the status of your transmission is. I'm just turning the screw because it's tight enough I can open it. Cute. Oh, I like that. That's a nice little addition. The trapdoor back. Now the other thing, the differential there, you see the screws. It's quick release, 4 screws, so that's handy. But like most rear motored ESC cars where the speed controller is there, it's in the way. So to get rid of it, to delete it so we can get at the diff, Reve-D did this. They put a little slot there, put a little piece there, and it just slots right back into place. Done. See that? So I like that. There's two neat little innovative features. The battery holder is nice. They give you spacers to put whatever size battery you want. Plastic fan mount included. You know, yeah, it's a nice budget level kit, and it does perform really good, even with a lock diff as well. So, all right, enough about the features of the car. Even though it looks awesome and gets really good steering lock out of the box with lock stoppers. See the stopper there? The stopper's right there. Right there. Yeah, it even comes with the included brake disc and caliper. Really cool, right? And excuse me. So yeah, let's jump into the manual. I've referenced the car along the way. But yes, this is the RDX Constructor's Digest. And if we jump in, we see right away there's a bunch of words and things and Reve-D. Little tips for you to read, notice for driving, etc, etc. Tools used on this page, okay, pretty simple. 2mm Allen wrench, 1.5, a nut wrench, and additional tools you're going to need needle nose pliers, small Phillips screwdriver. I think it's a PH1 you'll need, the small head one. And to make your life easier, if you have the hex drivers, the hex bits in drivers, or an actual electric screwdriver, that will help as well. Side cutters as well, or you can also get the shock shaft pliers, which help you installing the shock shafts in the shocks. Now, we've gone through that. Let's dive in here. So, page 1, bag 1, and all the parts are laid out right here. And the parts that are 1-to-1 scale, as it says right there, 1-to-1 scale. These are the parts that if you're unsure of the sizing or whatever, you can reference from here, and this is the true to scale size, whereas these parts are not true to scale in this illustration there. So just to note that. However, first bits here, installing the first piece of the bell crank, a nut here and a screw here, okay, and pretty straightforward. But to get to that piece, you got to do this first. And oh, I forgot to put a note. and actually write it down here, but it's a good idea to put some thread locker, aka Loctite, on the screw there, just very little small amount on the tip of the screw there, so that it goes into that metal bell crank post and stays in there nicely. Same as I wrote it over here for this screw that goes into that post there. That's an aluminum post, so that will keep it from falling out, loosening out under load. That nut is a locking nut. It's got nylon in it, as it says, nylon nut, so that will hold itself together, that assembly there. And one other thing to note, just for you guys, the shim here, I did put one shim in my car and everything seems to be good. And it says here it's for the backlash adjustment. So if you have a little bit more, or there's play later on, you can add more of these shims to clean up any kind of slop that may occur in the future, which is nice. And those shims are right there. That's this is some of the extra parts from the build. I'm just referencing that's what they look like, those little tiny shim guys. And yes, so once you get that assembled, moving on, pretty straightforward, using one of the fixed links, as they call them. Now, they call this just servo rod. Now this is the 43mm rod. You're noting it 43mm. Now take note of which side they're showing it on. So they're showing it on the far side. So make sure to place that steering rod fixed link just like so. The illustrations are really good in this manual, so I'm very happy with that. And in the ball bearings there and there, I like to put a little bit of oil when they're installed, just to get them nice and lubricated. So once you get to that part, that's what the completed assembly would look like. And then we move on from there to here, where we're adding the RDX top mount. And before you put that top mount on, they suggest at least one shim there on the top side of that what do they call that, bell crank post. I put one, everything seems to be good, so I don't need to put any more for now, but there's more there if you need it, and that's those shims right there. Same note there as it was above, and then you have your completed assembly. Excuse me. Now moving on, still in bag one, there's still some plastic parts here. This is the center link, as it's called. It's kind of basically part of the bell crank. It's to me it's like, it's a mimic piece of what the slide rack kind of would be, but it's more of the steering rack instead of a slide rack. Okay, because it's running off the bell crank post. Those are the positions they want you to screw in. Those ball studs, the ball stud M, which is right there. Those holes, please. That's where I put mine. 51.7 millimeter tie rod. It's a fixed link, and note the position of where the numbers are showing. And the actual position from looking at this here, that number is upside down. So when you position it against that piece, make sure the number is actually facing that, so it would read against that. And the spacer there is a plastic spacer. That's these guys right there. Okay, those guys. They come on a little like spiral tree. There's two of them, so that's what those are. Because the spacers in these other parts are for the suspension. Okay. So once you complete that, it's pretty straightforward. Screwing into plastics, you don't need any thread locker or Loctite. Someone asked me what I meant by Loctite, and Loctite is a brand of liquid thread locker, and I kept using it in one. I kept using it. It's this stuff, basically, thread locker. But this is by JB Weld, this particular brand. But there's another brand called Loctite, and a lot of us in Canada refer to it as that stuff as just Loctite instead of thread locker. It's one of those, you use the brand name for the item instead of the actual item's name, like Kleenex and tissue, that kind of thing. So if you catch me saying Loctite a lot, I mean liquid thread locker. That's what I mean. And we use that on screws that go into any kind of metal or aluminum post. So once you've done that, moving on, and we're still in bag one, okay, 1:1 scale parts there. Putting in the kingpins of the steering rack. Don't forget to put the shims in there. Definitely need those shims. Okay. But still, it's for backlash adjustment, so I only put one there, one each side. And away we go. And then make sure I put a little bit of oil in the bearings, and it's very straightforward, screwing into the plastic bell crank arm, and then you're done. Now, one little piece here that they are noting, the addendum, or I say addendum, but the tip. Yes, so the 10 pieces of resin spacers, that's these things, those spacers there, save them for later. I was saying that already, I think. But also, oh, up here, that's the piece here that they've circled the kingpin screws. When you screw those kingpin screws into the bell crank there, don't over tighten them, go slow, make it kind of snug, but not super snug, because if you tighten it too much, the movement of this will be stiff and the car won't work properly. So make sure to not to do that. And that's the screw inside there, in between there, that black screw. Maybe you can see it better on the front. Yeah, right there. See it better on the front side there in the middle of the rack. That's the ones not to over tight, otherwise you'll have no movement. It'll be too stiff. Okay, so first page done. Moving on. Where are we now? We're on to bag 2, main chassis. Okay, note the position of the front and rear. The rear has the extra cutaway there. Okay, lower suspension mount, and 4 screws and away it goes. Pretty simple. Narrow side is the front side. Okay, narrow side of the part is the front side, and I put a star here because the positive way, the positive side, is the one that they want you to do first, but you have the option of mounting it in the negative side way, and you can see the visual difference of the way the part looks and how it affects the positioning of the rod, the suspension rod arm, the suspension rod that the arm will mount onto. Okay, so positive side, and you mount that piece as such. That's easy peas. And then once you've mounted that, we take the completed assembly from the previous page of the steering bell crank and bolt it onto the chassis, 2 screws. It's just funny, right? People say bolt it on, but it's actually we screw it on. So anyways, install it, and then that will be the completion of the steering bell crank front end assembly piece. From there, we move down to the next part, still in bag 2, of course, and we're going to put the rest of the front bulkhead together here. Front of the front bulkhead, top side of the front bulkhead, upper suspension mount they call it, and the shock tower, which only has 1 position on each side. Easy peasy, ball stud M, screws, way go. Now, you'll notice there's like circle ridge here, raised circles. On the other parts, on the other side, there's little engraved circle, like indent circle. It's so those parts fit together nicely, and I really like that. It makes it really helps the beginner get the fitment of the parts correct. So if you screw something together and it doesn't feel right, or something like is kind of warped or whatever, it's because those pieces haven't meshed together nicely, and they do fit together nice. They don't really give you a snap or whatever, and they won't stay together if you just put them together and sit them on the bench. But as you're assembling it, it's nice to know sort of how they should fit, and that's ideal for that. So most of the parts have that, and most of the parts labeled for left or right are clearly indicated in some fashion, which is also, I'll make points of that throughout the manual. But they really did they did good brainstorming on little things like that in the manual. So once you complete this, you'll have that assembly there, and then we take that assembly, the front bulkhead, up from here and put it on the front of the chassis. 4 screws, 2 top, 2 bottom, and that completes bag 2. Bag 3 is the servo, and you don't have to install the servo right away. I chose to, just so I could have the servo in the car, but I didn't power it up. So I installed the servo with the shims and everything, put the spacers on as such, but I didn't install the servo horn. I put the screw in there, got the screw ready for here, like left it off to the side, and just didn't install it on the actual servo until I powered the servo up and neutralized the position to then install that, which is ideal. And you can do it either way you want, that way like that, but I chose it to just install it and then do all the electronic neutralizing and setup later. So it shows it here installed on the servo in that particular position. Once it's neutralized, a little offset, because that will give it the most straightest position when you connect it up here. So I just chose to do this part after the whole car was built, and I was wiring all the electronics together. I just did all the electronics, kept that all together at the end of the car. So that's how to get the servo in there, which is step 3 in bag 3, and that's all that is for step 3, because right after that we move to the rear suspension arms, and excuse me. So here we go. It's rear suspension arm, ball stud, SN, and the SN is like that, and it has a short neck on it. And what's next? And then make sure you get the spacers right here. Those two are the same, 2.5, and then that one is a really big one, a 6mm, and this is the 1-to-1 scale of that. and the suspension pin as well. Okay, and this is for left side, this particular one, but you'll do the right side in the same manner, but marked for left 45A, marked for the right side is 45B, and you can see where those should be positioned and how they should be positioned. Good markings there in the manual. You complete those two rear suspension arms, and then you build the rear suspension mountings. And I like the way they did this, because you put the suspension arms in the suspension mounts, and then you have support mounts in the middle that screws both of the main mounts together, and so you end up with this, which is really nice. So this is easy peas. Two screws there, 2 screws there, put the mounts in the middle, make sure all that assembly, like all these things, don't fall off. Just take your time. And what I even did was, before putting these pieces in place here, I bolted in the suspension mounts, the support mounts first to one side, then put these in, and then sandwiched it together. 2 screws done. So that made that easier to do this, and that's actually really nice to then take that assembly, pop it all on the car with 6 screws there, all going into plastic. And yeah, it's a nice little quick little way of doing that. I like that. Now, in the parts tree, like on these things where all the parts were that you peel off, what I call the parts tree, they call the runner. Okay, so when you see runner, it means where all the parts are. So here for the rear suspension, they have included 1mm spacers, plastic 1mm spacers, and round spacers, rectangle spacers and round spacers, for the rear suspension to put, see where the arrow is? I've put it between the assembly here and the chassis, so it goes, let's see here if I can get a nice shot. So, can you see there? Basically, it goes between, where's my trusty little screwdriver, so it goes between the suspension mount there and the chassis block, so it's right in between there. So that's where it goes, in between the mount and the chassis, and it raises the suspension mount up 1mm off the chassis, which gives increased droop and suspension travel. So that's good, and they say, it says it here as a tip, and I installed mine, and yeah, definitely do it, because the MC1, this makes the MC1 drive a lot better, and any other car really for that matter. You could also put these in such a manner that you can have anti-squat or pro squat, but I chose to just put the spacers one front side, rear side of the mounting, and then the 2 round ones go for the middle of the support beams here and here. Okay, and then that's what it looks like when it's installed on the car. And that completes bag 4. In step 4 we move on to step 5, assembling the diff spool. This car came with a lock spool instead of a oil-filled gear diff, which is a change from sort of the norm we've seen, but it actually works pretty good. So bag 5 and screws, straightforward, complete. Okay, really hard to mess that one up. Now, still on bag 5, these are the outdrive cups, 2 bearings, a screw, sorry, 2 screws, 1 on each side, sandwich it together, away you go, and put some oil in those bearings. Done. Here's what I like about this car. It wasn't super difficult to build. There's a couple areas where you have to definitely pay attention, but otherwise, yeah, stuff goes together pretty nicely. Like even here, prepare the idler gears for the transmission, install the bearings in the gear, you're done. I just put a little oil in each, away you go. Okay, and it comes in, what's that? Actually, is that step 6? Okay, yeah, so bag 5, could build the diff, that's done. Bag 6, step 6, assembling the gear case. Start with those idlers, like I said, parts, and then we move on to actually putting them into the transmission case. Okay, and I've written thread locker here because these are aluminum posts that the idlers live on. They're called the idler gear shaft. So putting thread locker on those screws, both sides, it shows it down here later as well. I wrote it there, so you can let thread locker on those 2 screws so they go into the idler gear shaft, and that will help keep those from loosening off and the screws coming off, and then all that rattling around and destroying itself. I've seen it happen in other similar style cars where the post actually screws in like that. Yeah, and then put a little oil on that bearing, slide all that together, that's what it'll look like. Okay, and then the other side, some oil on that bearing, the thread locker, like I said, 2 other screws, sandwiched together, away you go. And just like I was showing you at the beginning of the video, there's the top section of the transmission that's exposed. But finishing off the transmission assembly, you take the top cap, as they call it. I like that top cap, or I like to call it the trap door, and unscrew and assemble it, and away you go. Top door. I thought that was neat when I saw it in the manual, because I didn't see anything about that in all the preview stuff and the hype leading up to it. So that's cool. Same with the ESC mount. I didn't even realize or notice, or did they set it or not, but that was cool. Now, bag 6 also contains the rest of the transmission mountings. Okay, there's a few different ways you can mount the battery, and you don't need to go through thoroughly every single one, to be honest, because it's very similar how all this goes together, but we're gonna go through it. Basically, it just depends whether you're running a LiPo. Sorry, no, it doesn't matter if you're running a LiPo or a NIM, but it does depend whether the battery is the long standard type or the shorty. Okay, the short battery, or even short slim. They have a thing. They have the battery spacers for that, like I have installed right there. So this is set up for short slim battery, but it's nice. You can run the battery horizontal or vertical in the car. So bonus. Now we're gonna go through this. So I chose to do the standard shorty LiPo. Okay, so to do that, you will use that piece, 2 screws. It bolts on right there. And then don't forget to put that screw in the bottom side right there. See, there it is. Okay. If you use the long battery, see the difference in the parts? You use the long battery using that small upper deck mounting piece, top deck mount. 2 screws and that same screw in the bottom. Okay. Move the car there. Still in bag 6. Okay. Bag 6 up here, the rear diff cover for the diff. 4 screws, install the diff, quick change style. That's in there. And what's illustrated here is the shorty battery upper deck mount. And in the middle of all this, we're going to do, let's say middle, sorry, not middle. This is for the motor mount, and they show you the 2 options. Motor normal position is this, which is like what I'd call mid-high. Okay, so that's what they call normal. So that's the motor living there. High mount position is where the motor stands completely up high, so up here like this. So I chose to do it standard in the normal position. Okay, but it's just literally turning the motor mount by removing the 3 screws, and then you're done. And then that is the completion of the gear or the transmission with your battery mount. Sorry, with the upper deck mount for a specific battery type installed. Okay, so moving on, in the case of the short battery horizontal installation, aka this one, you install this piece. Okay, 2 screws, that's what it looks like, and that's what it looks like from the top view. Then you come down here and install the battery holders, 2 screws each side, complete. Okay, if you're going to run the slim shorty, install these battery braces. If you're going to run standard 2S size shorty LiPo, don't install those braces. Okay, now moving on, still with the standard shorty LiPo normal positioning, we then install the braces, these spacer pieces, and the battery the battery clip mount. I almost pulled the car there like that, my bad. Those are the post parts. Okay, and screws. Now if you want to run a longer battery, the long battery, or a slightly bigger battery, you can add spacers to make it a little wider, and then you change the screw right there to an 18 mil from a 15 millimeter. Okay, and then that's what it'll look like when the assembly is put together there, those pieces. From there, you grab the battery plate, as they call it, but it's more like the arm, and clip them on, and away you go. That's a nice touch, nice and simple, and it looks good too. Okay, so once you have all that, then you come up here, and we're into, sorry, I forgot to mention as well, once we get into the this section, the battery holders, so top plate and battery section, battery holder, will be into bag 7. So bag 7, bag 7, bag 7, and then bag 7. Still on all of this page. Spur gear, which is all one piece, which people really wondered about how they change it. Reve-D has said we will be using the MC1's spur gear adapter, and they've already made a new part number for the RDX for that, so you can change spur gears and change the ratios and stuff. And so it's easy. Put a pin through the transmission upper shaft or main shaft and slide the gear on with the cross pin area in the backside. Slide it on and install the locking nylon nut. Okay, that's what it'll look like when it's done. Then you take that entire assembly and bolt it onto the rear of the car, and you've got 10 screws down here. Okay, they're all going to plastic, so just get them all in there nicely. Be sure not to strip them, like anything that goes into all the plastic. And then do the chassis braces up front, which are these pieces right here, all around, 8 screws total. Okay, if you're doing a shorty lipo, slim shorty lipo, or shorty, you are now done this part of the rear end assembly of the car, the transmission and upper deck area. Okay, the next few pages are just describing how to do the other battery installation. So in case of short battery vertical, which is what was the other difference between this one? Short. Oh yes, okay, yeah, short vertical. So this is where the car is inline. So if it were going like this, so same upper deck piece, same battery mount piece. Okay, same as the other one. Spur gear, same, mounted onto the car. Mounted onto the car without doing any of this side rail stuff, the side any of that. Okay, bolted onto the car, and then use these battery stopper brace pieces, which are here, I think, this and the other one. Oh no, sorry, they're these pieces. These are the pieces right here. See, and I have not used any of this because I didn't use it yet. Okay, so you install those there, 4 screws, and it looks like that, the upper side of the car. Then you'll take this piece, put it there, and install it onto this guy here. That one, set screw goes in there. Well, sorry, a pin slides through there, then a set screw goes through the top hole to secure it. See there, pin thing, and then the set screw, and make sure not to over tighten it because it's easy to strip, and the 1-to-1 scales, and then one snap pin, which I have an extra one right there because those are from my body. The snap pin there, which would go in between there to put that stopper piece in place to hold the shorty battery in right about there. Okay, and then you put those braces on, again, these braces, and then you're done that version. If you want the long battery, you install this style upper deck. Okay, and that's what it'll look like from after you do the transmission. Okay, battery holders, the side pieces, put those on. That's what it'll look like with the different upper deck. And then you can do the slim bars if you want. And then you put your spur gear on. Okay, but you have to put the they're putting the motor in high position. Okay, so yeah, so the motor plate is being shown in high position. I just realized that. So put that motor plate in high position, which I believe it describes it in the page before, the pages before. So high motor plate, install the spur gear, same as before, and don't do any of that side stuff. Okay, bolt it onto the car. That's what it will look like, the chassis plate, I mean. Then use those front stopper base pieces again. Okay, take that same plate I was talking about, this one, and instead of putting it this way, you put it this way. Okay, because it's going to hold the battery in place. Same pin there and set screw to hold that piece in place and allow it to move up and down to open. Okay, and that's what it will look like on the car. Snap pin to hold it in place. That single guy over there. Then you create this, which that's an antenna mount piece here. Where is that? Which I never really used, to be honest. I don't know where it went. It's somewhere around here. But yeah, there's that piece, and then this is the side deck, as it's called. Now these are these pieces, this one and this one, okay? And they would be going on the side of the chassis on the bottom. So, pop that open. So they would be bolting here, right there, side deck. Okay, I kind of like that. Okay, side decks pieces, and you mount them there, 4 screws, and that's what it will look like. And then the long battery can then sit on those chassis braces, those pieces, and then you're done. The horizontal long battery installation. Oh, sorry, vertical battery installation inside the car, and the electronics will go on the side. Okay, so but you have the option of doing it on the long horizontal way as well. Okay, once you get to that point of just completing how you want to do the battery, okay, you move on to the rear suspension, which is step 8. Now we use parts from bag 1, which is one of the fixed lengths, 43.3. There's 2 of them, and 2 spacers, and the rear shock tower whole piece. It's like a whole kind of a bulkhead and rear shock tower all in one, because it does the upper link, it does the body post, it bolts heavily onto the rear or onto the transmission, and it feels like a bulkhead to me anyways, but it's the rear shock tower, and it's where the ESC clips on as well. So spacers, ball studs, clip those on and note the position of the numbers and where they are and the orientation. Easy peasy. And note the hole for the fixed link where they want it from factory, and you can change that later on as much as you want, but that's where they want it. Okay, and it's nice and illustrated for you. This is cool. They've made holes direct fit for their graphite rear body mount plate, which is from the MC1. So if you didn't use one in your MC1 kit and you want to throw it on here, which I might even have a spare, I might do that. But I'm running posts for now out the box as a beginner spec mode, and I'm a body post guy anyway. Even though I love magnets and the scaleness, yeah, body posts are cool. They're old school. And you can put the weldy-weld overdose scale latch pin things anyway on the body post, so good. So that's if you want to do that, okay. Otherwise, take that assembled rear shock tower assembly and bolt it onto the rear of the transmission, which covers up that gear. 4 screws, and away you go. Okay. Continuing on to finish it off, bag 8. This is where I had another one of those. Ooh, that's a very innovative moment. What's this? The ESC rear mounting plate. It literally just slides onto that back clip, just like I showed you. Yoink. See that? And you just gotta get it set, and that's it. It's done. It's installed. So easy. But that's really handy. You can almost like quick change your ESC almost, because this actually I could, because this has pins. Ugh, come out. Yeah, see? I could quick change my ESC. Oh, look at that. Oh, no. Go back in. Yeah. See, that's nice. Okay. So you put the ESC plate on, everything's gravy. We now continue with bag 8. We're going to do the rear uprights, rear knuckles. Okay, lots of holes there, but that's the one they want you to use for the ball stud. Okay, so use that hole. Take your time. The drive shafts are pre-assembled, but if you want to add more grease, they give you a nice huge bottle of black grease. Like a good amount of black grease is up in there. So even if you don't use this right away, save this, because this will come in handy later. Okay, and it's kind of like an anti-wear grease, so that's how the drive shafts assemble. If you need to take them apart or maintenance or whatever, that's how that goes. But for up here, plastic spacer, one of those guys from the spiral thingy. Put it there, ball stud, and don't forget the bearing spacer in between those 2 bearings on this side. Put it on the front side of the upright, lube the bearings, and you're done. And then do the other side in the same manner. And like I was saying, things are clearly marked. Left side, see right there, there's an L on that part, and on this one they've circled here that there is an R, so you know exactly which side is for which. Okay, when you finish that, you complete the assembly fully by adding the wheel disc brake caliper and disc brake hub. So there's a drive pin there, disc brake, and they've noted exactly which one you need, RA, okay, for the left side, okay, clearly marked. And they just want you to temporarily fix this nut, so just thread it on with your hand. When you get to the nylon, do a little half turn just so it sits there. Good enough. That's what it'll look like, and you don't have to crank that all the way down. And same for the other side. The part is marked R for the rear knuckle for the right side, and the disc one they want there is RB. Okay, clearly marked, easy to do. Now for the brake caliper, they've noted here that yes, the brake calipers mount holes there are oblong, so they're not just a tiny circle, they are more ovalish, and that allows you to adjust the caliper. Okay, adjust the caliper here so that it does not hit your brake disc and things spin very nicely. Okay, so that disc doesn't actually interfere with the brake, and you can see the brake disc just protruding through the caliper there, kind of like real life, so you can actually see that it doesn't hit and it spins smoothly. So that was a nice touch too. I like that. It's not too hard to adjust that, and just snug and go really slow and snug the screws so that caliper stays, and you'll be good to go. And then there's your completed assembly. That's a nice little touch. They added that for a little bit of scale. I like that. And the calipers are even painted, they're in a gunmetal plastic, which I like as well. See that? See the color of it? It's not black, it's not silver, it's gunmetal. Like, I like that. See? Look at it. Gunmetal, man. Scale. Alright, now install those onto the car. Okay? The suspension pin. This is where you'll need the Phillips screwdriver, the PH1, the small boy, which that's a PH2. PH2, there it is. PH1. Oh, it says BM1, but basically that's what you want, and that'll be used for that screw there. Okay, and don't forget that they want one front side and one back side. Okay, so you want one on this side right there, and you want one on that side on the back side. Okay, straightforward, screwing into plastic. This, I think, completes bag 8, step 8. Yes, it does, because bag 9, step 9, we are moving on to the front suspension now. Ball stud, spacer, okay? Threaded rod, alright? So take the threaded rod, they call it a set screw, but threaded rod, whatever. And you're going to screw this, it says, until it reaches the back of the arm side hole, so that hole. Basically, screw it in until you start feeling like, it trying to like stop or resist you, that's it. So when I use this, you can always hear it screwing into something, ring, ring, ring. So I just use a slow setting, and I would listen for a ring, ring. When I hear that slow, heavy slowdown of my electric screwdriver, that's how I know it reached that certain endpoint, and to just stop the screwdriver. So similar thing, if you're doing your screwdriver, you're going to have similar feel, and all of a sudden it's going to tighten up. That's it. That's all you need. That's all they mean there. So don't go too far, because you don't want it to protrude through and ruin that hole. Okay. And once you do that, straightforward, add a spacer, screw your bulk up on, and you're done. And people were asking me, what about adjustments and stuff? Yeah, we can put more spacers in there and move that out, or take the spacer out and move that in, for sure. But out of box spec, it's drives so dang good. Just do this and get used to it first. If you're a tuner, do what you want. But just to get it built in roller and figure out your spec field, do that. Okay. And then you move on from there and you build the suspension pin. And this is different from most other cars out there, because there's no front suspension mount. It just holds on that pin, because it mounts in the middle, which is nice, different. So build the pin. E-clip, and they're a little annoying, but just try to press fit them in with a pair of pliers, or use like a hardboard or a cutting board. Get the E-clip onto the pin upside down, and then press it down. I'm going to do a buildy type of video with tips and tricks, stuff like that, how to do it and all that soon. But you put that one there, slide the plastic suspension pin knob on for there, and then put an E-clip over the front of it, so it looks like that. Okay. Then you will use that pin to slide through the front there while putting the suspension arm on. And then don't forget that they want a spacer on the back side, which is one of those little black ones from that little tree there. And then grab the little set screw guy, that guy, and slowly screw it into the plastic there, right there, and go slow so that you feel it start to hit the pin and get nice and snug, and you don't strip it. Okay, that's good. We'll adjust the turntable there. So that's that. Once you have those suspension arms mounted onto the front, we move to the upper arm. We're still on bag 9, okay? Upper arm, threaded rod, same idea with the bottom arm, move the screwdriver, feel the resistance, or ring, ring, do that. For the upper arm, spacer, ball cup, done. Very good. So very similar to the lower arm side. For that manner, there's your guide there in your 1:1 scale. And then you will install it in the upper arm, and they want a spacer on the front side of the arm. So We can adjust this a little bit by moving the spacer around to adjust the caster. There is subtle caster adjustment, but really not much. It's like 1 millimeter of movement on the arm, so I don't really know how many casters that's going to give. Probably not many, a couple degrees if anything, but there will be a way to tune, don't worry, and there will definitely be option parts coming. I know it, and a bunch of the MC1 stuff fits already, so there's going to be lots of stuff. Okay, so that's straightforward. And again, use a set screw on the top side right there. Screw it in. Don't over tighten it. Nice and snug. Nothing will fall out. Still on bag 9. We're still on the front suspension. Okay, we have to do the knuckles now. So this is how the knuckle will look. I thought it was upside down at first. Okay, right here, the left knuckle. That's this one right here. Okay, right there. So you notice the stopper is on the top side of the knuckle, okay? So it hits on the top side of the upper arm, right here. See that? Right there, okay? So, yep, stopper. Now here I got slightly half confused, and here for ball stud SN, it's the short neck one, but they put sort of the wrong, I should have made a star. They put the wrong illustration there because they want the short neck one right there. Right there, that one. That's the short neck. Okay, not standard neck. Like that one, regular neck, I guess you could call it. They want that for the steering link for that piece there, okay? And don't forget the spacer there as well. And that's one of those guys, okay? So regular ball studs top and bottom, and then the short neck one there, bearing, axle. Don't forget to lube the bearings, okay? Put some oil in there. That's what it will look like. And the other side is assembled in the same way, just opposite, okay? When it comes to the front disc and brake calipers and stuff, same thing, but they tell you exactly which one. FA for the left side. The only thing I noticed was this part they didn't actually mark left, but you can see by the way it's assembled which way will be which, and you can always reference back to that picture, okay, and or reference that. So FA for the left side and FB for the right side, and temporary fix the nut with the little half twist on the nylon like I was saying, because unless you want to thread that all the way down, you know, I don't really want to. It's quite a long axle in the front compared to the rear, but that's good. That means there's lots of offset available from, you know, rim offset. Same thing, front calipers have the oblong hole right there and allows movement of the caliper, so you can get the fitment right so she doesn't grind on the caliper. Okay, now once you have all that assembled, we will put it on the car, and I was able to snap those all in with my own fingers, which is good because my fingers aren't super duper strong when it comes to snapping ball cups into ball studs. I usually cheat and use the pliers, but yeah, install those on the front of the car, and then you pretty much have the completed front suspension assembly right there. That then completes bag 9. Sorry, that does not complete bag 9. We're almost done bag 9. However, we can move away from that, and if you want to install motor and or fan, you can right here. I chose to, so I installed my motor as such. 2 screws and the washers, and metal washer that is. Okay, that's a metal washer. That is not those pieces. That's a metal washer. Thread locker on those screws, or your motor will come loose and it will move away from the spur gear, and you will probably destroy it. Chew the teeth out. I've seen it all the time. Okay, definitely use thread locker on there. And your pinion, which this does include a 20-tooth pinion. Okay, that's nice. And the set screw for it. Use thread locker on that set screw, or the pinion will come loose, it will shoot off, and damage will occur. I've seen it happen. I wish I had just rolled in the shops more for those, because there were the pinion gear once. Someone's car shot off under boost. It damaged the spur gear, took a chunk out of the spur gear, and actually hit the tire, and hit it so hard it actually gouged like 4 or 5 teeth deep, noticeable like imprint in the tire. It was quite amazing. It made an amazing sound too, and it actually bent the motor shaft. The motor shaft was no longer straight, it was slightly bent, so when it spun it was doing this. Yeah. But anyways, thread locker is important. Do that. What I really like as well with this car is this plastic fan mount, which is an optional extra on pretty much most basic level YD2s and plus cars as well, and most cars out there. They included that plastic fan mount to put a 30mm fan on, so that's really nice, but you don't get any mounting screws. You have to source those yourself. Hopefully it comes with the fan, which it doesn't for most fans. So you have to source screws, and they don't even tell you what length it is, but it's like 25 or 30mm screws, like lengthwise. It's long. It's really long. I can't remember the exact one, but you'll want length. Anyways, plastic fan mount, if you mount it, that's where it would go, and that's what it would look like, and that's really nice. So that, and if you want gear ratios, you can hit that QR code for transmission ratios. Okay. So after that, bag 9 is complete. We then move on to the shocks, bag 10. Some people like to take a break at this point because you're nearly like 3 hours deep at this point of assembly. Believe it or not, and usually sometimes the shocks can take people half an hour to an entire hour, and usually the shocks are pretty much the end of the kit, minus like bumpers and body posts and a few other little odds and ends. So sometimes, like I said, people like to take a break here and then reset themselves, come back and hammer out the shocks. So with that, we can dive right in. Your post E-clip right from the start there, okay? Clip it in with the needle nose pliers, like I said, or push them in on the old cutting board, and then put your 4-hole piston on top and clip an E-clip into the top, and use needle nose pliers for that, and go slowly, and you'll get it in no problem. Okay, just take your time. They are a little bit annoying, but you just take your time. Make sure that E-clip slots into the shaft's groove before you actually clamp it. It'll just partially set into the groove, and then you can take the plier and clamp it in. That's what I do. And I'm going to do a how-to of how to do that, or a how-to of how to build shocks soon, so I can reference it to people. Okay, that's what it will look like when it's done, that piston assembly, shock shaft and piston assembly. So then you take that and install into this cylinder, the shock body. Okay, they call it a shock cylinder. And then from there, you have the shock shaft protruding through the bottom of the body. We're going to do this in these orders: O-ring first, then the shock shaft guide, and then the cap, the bottom cap. So what you want to do is take your O-ring, put it on your finger, take your shock oil, which in this case is 50 weight oil, which is nice and soft. Dab some oil onto the O-ring, like on your finger onto the O-ring, and make sure it goes through the O-ring. Make that O-ring nice and wet and slippery, and take it and then slide it over the shock shaft, because you'll have to go over some of the threaded part of the shock shaft, and if you don't put oil on that O-ring, you will start cutting up that O-ring. So the oil helps it to slide across without damaging it. Okay, so make sure to do that. Then put that into the bottom of the shock. Okay, and then put the rod guide in, and make sure it sits correctly. There's an upper side and a lower side. Okay, the bigger side goes toward the O-ring, the smaller side goes towards the end cap. All right, straightforward. Bing, bang, boom. Then you have the bottom end assembled. Then you can take your the ball cup, they call it the shock end, and I like to use the proper pliers for this. So you take your shock shaft pliers, put the shock shaft in between there, clamp it to hold the shock shaft while you screw your ball cap on. You can also use needle nose pliers and put cloth between them, and then clamp the shaft that way to prevent the teeth from gripping the shaft. That's one rudimentary way. Another way is taking the side cutters, and like, see that side cutter area, and putting that side cutter area in between the hold on, let me get this out here, in between the threads, in between there and there, and clamping the end of the shock shaft. I'm using a screw as an example. Clamping it like this. Oh, yeah, clamp it like that. Okay, at the very top of the threads with your side cutter, and that will hold the shock shaft so you can screw the ball cap on. Okay, if you don't have the shock pliers, but I recommend getting them. They're very nice. I'm going to do a tool video soon of my preferred tool set and the favorite tools to have to do most of my mechanic work and car building and stuff like that. So you'll have that, and they're saying here you should have a spec of about 11mm from full shock extension from the bottom of the ball cup to the bottom of the shock. So it's roughly that. I believe that's what I got. Yeah, so once you do that, then it's time to fill it with oil. But when I did my reading here, I did get a little confused with the translation to English, because this shock shaft here is shown fully extended, also what's known as bottom dead center. So the piston is all the way at the bottom of the body, okay? It's shown here like that. And it says, when the shock pushed in, fill the cylinder with oil. That's correct. So I'm assuming pushed in, as in it's all the way down. But at first I thought with that, I thought it meant that, pushed in, pushed upward. But it's real. The way to do it is to have your piston at bottom dead center at the bottom of the shock body and fill it full of oil. Then move the piston up and down slowly to move the oil around the body under the piston, get rid of the air trapped, get rid of the air bubbles, okay? And then when I did more reading, it said place the diaphragm and shock cap end while the shock is pushed in and tighten the shock cap nut. Looking at it here, it means to me bottom, and it's, you know, the piston is pushed into the body, even though that's not the right translationings. That's what I'm interpreting up there. And then down here they're showing the ball cup and shock shaft, like no shock shaft there, so they're illustrating that that's been pushed in basically like this, like the shock has been pushed up like that, which that I don't think would work at all, to be honest. So make sure to leave your shock piston at, once you're done bleeding it, leave it at the bottom of the shock piston with the ball cup all the way pulled out, okay? And then, because you'll be all no bubbles and the oil good, then put the bladder on there. I actually did it this way this time. Put the bladder on the top where the oil is. The oil will, some oil will come out a little bit, but the right amount should bleed out. And then put your shock cap end or top hat and put the cap on there, screw it together. Little bits of oil should come out to the side, wipe it off. And to be honest, my shocks were like perfect the first time. There's a little bit of wetness here from us using them and stuff, and then the seals setting in, the bladder setting in there, the shock bladder, but the car still feels pretty good, and the shocks, they worked, like they felt good and perfect pretty much right out the gate, which sometimes isn't the case. Usually is not the case with any shocks, but definitely with plastic shocks. But they actually were pretty good, and they worked pretty good. So once you get to there and you've got good feel, and the shock, when you push the piston in, it should come right back out at a smooth rate and come all the way back out. If it stays in or only comes out half, you need to adjust the oil level and do the top mounting part again, and then you should get it right. And then put the spring adjuster nut, the preload collar here, screw it onto the body. That's this guy right here where the shock sits in, okay? The spring, what the spring sits in. And make sure you use the correct spring for the front and the rear, okay? The front want the shorter length spring with the double tier at the bottom, okay? The rear want the longer spring with the double tier towards the top side, okay? So to illustrate that here, double tier down there at the bottom on the front, okay? And the double tiered coil here on the slightly longer spring towards the top side, not the bottom side, on the rear, okay? Once you've done that, you've completed step 10, which is the shocks. And then all you need to do is take your shocks and mount the front one, the ones with the front springs on the front and the ones with the rear springs on the rear. Snaps. I got them all snapped on with my bare hands, which was nice. Done. And then you move on to bag 11, and we're almost completed. So you can pat yourself on the back, because the shocks are usually a big step and sometimes stress people out. But you just take your time. If it gets all wibble wobble, just start over. You know, no big deal. I'm gonna do a definite shock how to build video very soon, so you can reference that soon. But yeah, once you're done the shocks, we move on to bag 11, step 11, installation of the body mount rear diffuser. And this is very straightforward. The body mount front base piece there, you see how it's illustrated? Hold it like that. You see how we have the body mount front base posts here. Note the illustration and how they're orientated. 2 screws assembled, okay? Take that assembly, 4 screws onto the front bulkhead, and away you go. And then take the front body mount plate, which is this piece, which is more commonly referred to as like a front bumper, because that's kind of what it is. But essentially body mount plate, and make sure you put Reve-D at the front of it right there so it looks good, and because also that's the way it should be orientated to match body post geometry for most Yokomo and MST cars. And yeah, that body we had it on at the beginning of the video is a Yokomo S15, so those body post holes are the little predefined areas on the body, and I simply body reamered them out, created the holes, and dropped the body right on. and then I just adjusted the front post to move it. As we'll see here, you can spin the post front to back, and you can move the direction of the post 3mm to adjust. So I just adjusted it for that body, and bam, it was bang on. It's perfect, and the body fit perfectly. So I was really happy with that. So a lot of bodies will fit on basic body post geometry, and I love that that's been carried over throughout the years, and I'm very happy to see that. So, and you also have the option of the wide as well. So I had to move. They wanted you to do this in the inner holes first there, but I chose to do it on the outer hole because the S15 body that I have, that I use this one. See the holes on the outside there? Yeah, those are the predefined holes that the Yokomo suggests for it, and those holes there were the predefined ones for the rear, and so it drops right on. When I adjusted for the 3mm in the front, right? Perfect, like absolutely perfect, right? So very pleased with that result. So that's the front body post, okay? And then you'll move to the rear. First, to put the rear body post, you must put the rear body post stays, and that's just so you can have, that's these pieces here, so you can run the body post. And it's nice because if you don't run body posts, you don't need those at all. You don't need them at all. So you can take them off, and you can just mount magnets to that, or use the MC1 magnet mount back plate. And then do your rear body post mounting, and again you can change the orientation 3mm by flipping the body post around, and you can see the difference there. See how it's going like that? You flip it around and it goes like that. So 4 screws, and that goes on there. I mean 4 screws there, 4 screws there, bing bang boom, you're done. And then you can use these pieces if you like. Body mount seesaw. This just helps to spread the body's weight around the post hole instead of just using a pin. But I'm old school, so I'm using a pin. You basically use the pin and this piece. Yeah, but I'm old school. I just use the pin only. The other thing is this would help protect the paint, because then the pin's not scratching on the underside, but meh, I don't need this. Unless it's for concourse or whatever, I never really use them, but you can if you want. And then the very last piece, aside from the wheels and tires, is the rear diffuser, which looks very nice. Cute. Look at it. And it looks good under the body, too. So once you get to the rear diffuser, you're pretty much installing wheels and tires, and Reve-D give you a list of their wheels to use, and their drift tire is the AS01, which is on this car here. Reve-D AS01, okay, and that's Reve-D's drift tire, which works really good on this car. But the wheels I chose happen to be 7mm top lines, and I like them, so they work good. And crucially, when it's spinning through the stopper, wheel keeps going, no rubbage. So that's good. That's what we want. Once you get to the wheels, you're done. And then, yeah, so this also shows example of the electronic parts. Okay, so I was looking at this for electronic part installation reference based on where the battery was. So I chose this layout: servo, ESC gyro, receiver gyro, motor, and then ESC. Okay, motor in the back. Holy, brain's shutting off here. ESC in the back, motor in the middle, receiver gyro literally in the same positions, okay, as they're illustrating here, and servo right in the middle. But if you do the battery in the vertical or the long, then you can have the side decks to put your some of the electronics there, okay, or you can use the top deck right there, because the motor would be in high position, so you'd have all that top deck there. Little memo section in case you want to make some notes. I'm a little bummed out though that they did not have a setup sheet in here. They include an exploded parts view and a huge list and part numbers of all that's in description, but no setup sheet. So I don't know if that's ready or not, but I definitely want one so I can write down setups and stuff and recommendations for people, etc. And yeah, other than that, we come to the end. Believe in drift. You should then have a roller, which you can then install electronics, or most of the electronics installed, but you should be done. And that, my friends, is the Reve-D RDX plastic, fantastic, budget level kit, rear-wheel drive drift. Yes, I hope that could help, and hope there's some tips here. And just before I close out the video, coming up to an hour actually, we have some spare parts, either some spacers there, some of the upper deck stuff and battery mounting stuff from the optional battery mounts, those body post thingies, side decks, a couple of screws and stuff from the other battery mounts, the 23 tooth servo horn because I use 25, on that servo, my Bad Shop OMG, woo, and some ball cups. We have some leftover ball cups, and someone was wondering if they were gonna put ball cups in for optional later. If you wanted to just get turnbuckles, like buy Reve-D's titanium turnbuckles and do stuff, you will be able to, because there's ball cups right here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, so you can do 4 sets. Probably the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so you could change the steering link there, and you can change that link with those right there, because that link right there is fine. I have no reason to change that right now, but these, you could use these to, turnbuckle there and there and there and there. So there you go, which is very nice to have some of the spare parts there. You're also left with the black grease and a good amount of oil, to be honest, shock oil, so that's also very nice. And this is just the bag of the tools and double-sided tape and stuff that I did not use because I have all my own tools, and that's that. So yes, we reached the end and we have completed the car. Video is over an hour. Well done. Longest Constructor digest ever, but there was a good amount to cover. And yeah, this car should go together fairly smoothly. Just take your time, don't rush, and don't be afraid to start over or ask for help, because everybody need help sometime. We're all living and learning out here. And yeah, so thank you very much for watching. Hope it helped your build, or pass it on to a friend. Or if you just want to check out the car and its build status, or dig through the manual before you buy one. It's a very nice laid out manual. As you saw, things are highly laid out, and I barely made any notes along the way, to be honest. So yes, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think if you've got one, things you might have run into or noticed, or blah blah blah. And happy to chat and interact, and spread some drift love and stuff. So like the manual says, believe in drift. We're going through 2023, Bad Shop. I ain't stopping. I'm doing all kinds of stuff this year. Like I said, lots of shootouts with this car, other comparisons. We might do some traveling, test stuff on different track surfaces. We're just going to try and do everything. So yes, enjoy the ride, and I'm glad to have you all along with me. And stay tuned, more to come. Thank you very much for watching. Like I said, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys again very soon. Bye now.